This man is genuinely humble, a man who came up the hard way, who didn't begin writing until he was 34 years old, right? So he's got, what, 46 books right now? He's making up for lost time and time somebody else had and borrowed something from somebody else. But a master of so many different genres within the pursuit of writing, and it's my honor to be able to talk with him tonight before we fling open the doors of conversation to you so that you will be able to ask him questions and to get your insight directly from the horse's mouth. I want to begin, Walter. I mentioned that you didn't begin writing professionally, in terms of how you got paid for it, until you were 34 years old. That is heartening to those who have been pursuing their work. I mean, you were a computer programmer, you were pursuing a PhD in political theory, so you had interesting careers to be sure, but, and The Color Purple, I believe it was, inspired you finally to take a writing course here in Harlem, if I'm not mistaken. So talk to us about the process by which you became a writer, both the serendipitous stuff, the fortuitous stuff, and the stuff you just set out to do.
It's really hard to say. I mean, I'm from California, which is like really the reason for a lot of things. You know, like in California, you imagine a woman turns 80, and you know she finally decides to retire, and so what are you going to do now? She said, well, I'm going to take up ballet. You know, I'm pretty supple. I can stand on my toes, you know, and that's where you are in California. I was just moving around. I was having fun. My father was very upset. I was, working as a programmer, worked as a cook, went to university, studied political theory. One day I was watching my professor. He was very conservative. He's right of Skip Gates, and he was, but he was also at Harvard. And anyway, he said. I was looking at him, and he was a master of Thucydides. I like the Greeks, and I was like listening to him talk. But I realized one day that I would never be at his level, and I wouldn't be satisfied if I was at his level. So I dropped out of graduate school, and I moved to Boston, and I was hanging out, and then I moved to New York. And one day I wrote a sentence. I had read The Color Purple. It's true, and I thought it was the first time I read something. I said, well, I could talk like, not like this, but like somebody else that resonates with this. And so I wrote a sentence, on hot, sticky days in southern Louisiana, the fire ants swarmed. Now, at first I thought I could be a writer, because that sounded like writing.
Right.
And second, I thought, well, I'll have to be a fiction writer because I'd never been to Louisiana, I'd never seen a fire ant, And so I made it up. But it sounded good, and it sounded good enough that somebody else might believe it, whether or not it was true. And so, then I just started writing, and because I'm from California, I didn't think that I was going to get published or anything. I just thought I would be writing, and that would be fun. And one day I would finish writing a short story. I had all this whole, like, really kind of weird plan that was like over 40 years. I'd move to Indiana and teach in a little school or something. But then all of a sudden I got published. It was like a shock. It was really a shock. I had sent one book out, nobody liked it. That was that whole thing. It was about Easy and Mouse, but it was Gone Fishing, and it was before they were detectives. And what the people said, they didn't say it directly, but this is what they meant. They said, well, white people don't read about black people, and black women don't like black men, and black men don't read, and so who's going to read your book? It's very well written, but nobody's to read it, And so then I wrote Devil in a Blue Dress, and people were very interested, and one guy said, but there already is a black detective. And I said, well, yeah, but there's a whole bunch of white detectives. And he said, I don't get what you mean. But and so then I was writing, and I love it. I love writing. It's a great thing, What I'd like to say is I'm a success in my own eyes, which is like probably the hardest thing in the world to do. Yeah. So I'm happy.